Hello and welcome. This meeting is being recorded. My name is B. Chatfield, and welcome to tonight's Flaherty Playground Design Meeting, number 2. Tonight's meeting is going to be interpreted in Spanish, and I am going to welcome Miguel Moreno and Ursula, and Miguel is going to explain how the interpretation works. Miguel, do you want to take it away? Miguel, I don't think we can hear you.
Yeah, it looks like you're unmuted, Miguel, but we cannot hear you for some reason.
No, we still can't hear you.
Could it be because, hold on, let's try this. I'm gonna remove you from the interpretation channel and see maybe your interpretation channel.
That's probably it.
There we go. All right, Miguel, why don't you give it a try right now?
Sure. Hello, my name is Miguel Moreno. I'm going to be one of the Spanish interpreters tonight. Hola, mi nombre es Miguel Moreno. Yo voy a ser uno de los intérpretes en el idioma español esta noche. Si usted necesita servicio de interpretación y está conectado o conectada desde una computadora, después que yo termine de dar las instrucciones, se le va a activar el servicio de interpretación. Tiene que ir en la parte de abajo de su pantalla. Va a haber un globo en forma de tierra, donde va a decir la palabra interpretación. Usted tiene que dar clic ahí y seleccionar el idioma español y luego da enter para que pueda entrar al canal de español. Si usted está conectado desde un teléfono, se le va a aparecer en la parte de abajo de su pantalla una barra con 3 puntitos, una opción de 3 puntitos. Usted da clic ahí, se le va a abrir una ventana y selecciona español, luego da clic ahí para que pueda entrar en el canal de español. Si tiene algún inconveniente entrar al canal de español, por favor déjenos saber en el chat. Gracias.
Thank you so much. So I welcome you back to the William F. Flaherty Playground Park Design Meeting number 2. I am here with our design team from Terra Inc. That is Kelly Connolly, Kelly Ashton, and Jade Cummings. And we are thrilled to come back to you guys tonight with some design concepts based on the feedback and direction we've heard. So if you could flick to the next slide. Here are some Zoom tips. During the presentation, we ask that you hold on to your questions and your thoughts and your ideas. And if you'd like to, you can put them in the chat and we will address those at the end of the presentation when we have our discussion. Otherwise, you could just hold on to them and we can discuss everything after the presentation, but we ask that in order to keep everything moving ahead in a manner that respects everyone's schedules, we'll do the presentation part first and then the discussion after. If you are comfortable sharing your video, that's great. Turn your video on. When Steve, who is here from Parks tonight, when he allows you to unmute yourself, if you want to ask a question or join the conversation at the end, you unmute yourself using the microphone. So if we go to the next slide.
Just for clarification, I think you need to raise your hand and then I select them to unmute them, and that's how it should work. So that's what's
awesome. Thank you, Steve. Always on it. Here's our agenda for tonight. We're going to do the project team intro, then the overview of the project, our design presentation, our listening and discussion, and then our next steps. Next slide. I am B. Chatfield. Many of you have already emailed me, so we're on a fairly familiar basis. But for those of you who haven't, here's my email address, abigail.chatfield@boston.gov. I never go by Abigail, only B, so hope that's not weird. Here's my phone number. It's my direct line. If you have any questions, comments, complaints, give me a call. We can talk about it. Christine Brandeo is our outreach coordinator. Steve is playing her role tonight. So Steve is helping out with our presentation, which is great. And then we also have Jade Cummings and Kellyanne Connolly. And we also have Kelly Ashton here from Terra Inc. They're our design firm. And Tiffany Caballero has been incredibly helpful, the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services, with our project. So next slide, please. So here we have our project overview. Next slide. Here is our schedule and funding. So we had a slight issue with administrative problems and the contract, which is why it took us quite a while to come back to you after the first meeting, which was frustrating. But here we are, January 1st, sorry, was our first meeting. And here we are in May with our second meeting. So the schedule will be a little bit faster after this, we promise. And we're looking to come back to you in the summer, potentially in July, for our third and final community meeting. This means in fall, we're going to have permitting and design development where our ideas become construction documents and specifications. And then we would go out to bid in spring of 2023. So next year. Hopefully we would have completion after about 6 months of construction. So that means fall would be the anticipated park opening of next year. Our estimated cost of construction at this point would be roughly 1.5 million. So that's great. It's not a huge playground, so it's a decent budget for that size. But there's a lot of work that we're looking at that could be done and should be done. So we'll have to use it judiciously, as with every public project, right? Next slide, please. So here we have our theory of our sort of design Venn diagram. We have to balance all these different things when we design a park. We have got the City of Boston priorities, our parks and recreation goals, community input, which is what we're doing here tonight, safety guidelines and regulatory guidelines, which we always consult. And then we bring the whole thing together. We ask the designers to bring all of these thoughts together and create a beautiful, brilliant design. So we, next slide, please. We've got our City of Boston priorities include expanding walkable access to parks, addressing equity, climate resilience, health of the community, housing and community building as well. Next slide. These often overlap, and we try to really push our Parks Department, Parks and Recreation goals further. We want to preserve and protect existing trees, expand usable park area, improve universal access to our parks. We want as many people to be able to use them as possible. Enhance park visibility, improve access to parks, and design flexible and multifunctional park spaces. We discovered during the pandemic, people want to use the parks for a lot of different things. And we want to encourage that, right? As long as everyone's being respectful of everyone else. So those are our parks and recreation goals. If we go to the next slide. So I'm going to pass the presentation off to the design team at this point, and they're going to do a little bit of a recap about our first meeting and those results, and then walk you through the design. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bea. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jade Cummings. As Bea mentioned, my team, Kelly Connolly and Kelly Ashton, we are the landscape architects on the project. And for this first section of our presentation, again, we're going to go through the presentation and then we're going to open it up for questions and conversation. The first part of our presentation is to review the existing condition summary, to take a look at what we heard from you after the first community meeting. I would like to thank everybody for the time that you took. The feedback was invaluable to our process. So thank you for caring about this place. If only every park was as cared for. So we're really doubly excited about this project, given the community attention and involvement. And after we discuss what we've heard from the community, we have developed 3 concepts to review with you, to give you a sense of how we are starting to envision the park. Then we will share imagery. At this point, community meeting 2, we're sharing what we call character imagery. So the imagery that you will see, these are not specific play elements that we are necessarily using. This is a general feel for the type of equipment that we are thinking at this early phase. So if you see a piece and you're just like, I think that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen, don't worry, we have not specified anything. And this is why our Q&A today will be particularly helpful. And then we will open up the conversation for your questions. So jumping in. For those of you who attended the community meeting 1, I'm going to just briefly review. During the first meeting, we really, we just jumped into the site and the immediate context. And so these first few diagrams were presented during the first community meeting, but just to debrief newcomers, we took a quick look at your neighborhood context, primary transportation routes, walking distances. We also evaluated circulation immediately around your park and within your park. Here we were focusing on pedestrian circulation within the park and then vehicular circulation along the perimeter. Then we broke the site into 3 primary zones that helped to inform, all of these diagrams helped to inform our ultimate concept development. And this is where we broke the park down into this primary open space zone, the existing playground area, and through our visits and conversations, research, we really felt that the park edges are significant, which you will see informed our ultimate design concepts. And then we took our initial research and we jumped in a little further during that early existing condition analysis for community meeting 1. And we broke down the open space even further. So, understanding we have a grass mound, we have a steep hill. During the first community, we learned that this granite tree stump artwork, circa 1993, is the beloved, we heard, Ladybug Rock. Again, super helpful. And we intend to maintain that element in the final design. We evaluated the playgrounds a little more closely to get a sense of what type of use is currently out there. And again, many of you responded with helpful feedback regarding your opinions. Is it sufficient? We've heard not challenging enough. How do we incorporate play for a greater range of users? And then so that was a recap of our first community meeting 1 and the research and analysis that we did. And then the feedback that we heard on the survey resulted in 4 questions that were particularly informative to our design process. The first question, what brings you to the park? And this was, again, informative to our process. Just passing through, meeting people, relaxing, dog walking, playground, play. So really, it's really coming through. This is a place for gathering, truly a community place, which we heard during the comments, the question and answer during community meeting 1, and it came through the survey. And we thought this was fascinating that travel to Flaherty, most of you are walking. Third question, what challenges do you see throughout the playground site? We heard many of you feel that we need additional activity, more program. Fewer of you are interested in parking, but we did hear that that is of concern. We were pleased to see that accessibility is an issue because accessibility is a design driver for us. So we were pleased to see that. And then safety and visibility, another design driver. And then finally, 4th question, what is your favorite component of the Flaherty Playground Park? The playground, the tot lot, the open space, and the existing trees. Really interesting to see that open space and the existing trees ranked so highly for the community, which again, as you will see, informed our concepts. As we move into the concepts, you will hear, again, we took this feedback to heart, and it informed our design. And one of the things that we heard, again, in the community meeting and through the survey, these trees are absolutely loved. We had people sending us photos, beautiful photos that they took on a spring day. So the first thing we did, because we do understand the importance of the trees to the community. I mean, we are landscape architects. We love them too. But what we need to do, again, as I had mentioned, initial design drivers for us are always accessibility, safety, security, and visibility. We always start there. And then in tandem with the tree analysis, we wanted to first understand what trees within the park are unsafe. We have to understand that when construction begins on your project, you can imagine a tree in the ground is only one part of the structure. There is a massive root zone going on beneath the surface of the ground. And if there is disturbance to any of those trees, we need to make sure early on that we are removing any trees that could be potentially hazardous to future users. And we also want to know at this phase which trees out there are potential, they're just potentially unsafe for anyone using the park. This could be due to internal tree rot that people may not readily see. It could be due to overhead limbs that just need to be pruned back. So in an effort to first understand the bones, the groundwork within which we wanted to work to develop the design, we enlisted the services of a licensed arborist. She was absolutely instrumental in helping to identify which trees should be removed at this point and why. And we also met with the City of Boston arborists. So we have double time going here with arborists to make sure any tree that needs to be removed from the park, this is not our judgment, this is not our opinion, but it was really the advice, feedback, and direction of 2 licensed arborists. We've met on site with these individuals, and as a result, we were able to develop this tree analysis. And again, I'm sure people will have questions about this, and we'll save this to the end, because my colleague, Kelly Connolly, she's horticulturally trained, understands everything that the arborists were discussing and presenting, and we're happy to answer those questions because we don't want anyone to walk away from this meeting feeling that we didn't hear. The good news for us was when we got the survey, there's always that moment of, oh, please don't let all the trees be rotten. Please don't let the suggestion be to tear 75% of them down, because we did not want to come before you with that, and we're not. So as you can see from this tree analysis, the orange X's are recommendations for removal. And the larger green canopies are the existing trees. And wherever we don't have an X, those trees have been determined to be safe and to remain. And in connection with this diagram, we really evaluated each individual tree to make sure no stone was unturned, and created this analysis of if a tree or a series of trees were proposed to be removed, we needed to know why, so that we could explain to you why, for safety purposes, these trees, excuse me, will need to be removed. So once we had a sense of what, again, this groundwork and structure for the trees that were to remain, this helped to inform our design concepts, which is the next section of this presentation. So as I mentioned, we have 3 concepts that I will briefly describe. And then at the end of the presentation, happy to go back to answer any questions on any specific questions. What is important to note is with all 3 concepts, again, from a designer perspective, as much as we wish we could just jump to what is beautiful and fun, that is not the first thing that we can jump to. As I've said, we have to first look at accessibility, safety, visibility. In this project, we're looking at the existing tree structure. We have to also look at the utility of the project. Where are existing utilities? Where are the existing grades? We are always dealing with a budget. We are dealing with program requirements from the City of Boston, from Boston Parks, from the community. And we're always working where possible to have the lightest touch possible on the land, so as to create a minimal amount of disturbance. Because when it comes to earthwork, this is where we can run into concerns with utilities, and this is where a lot of money can be spent. So you will see that in the following 3 concepts, we really looked at the existing plateaus within your project, and we've maintained the open spaces, the existing natural grade, and those edges that I had mentioned earlier, to try to keep as much in place as possible, so that we can nimbly work under the canopy within the root zones with the existing grades. So that said, the first concept, again, we have 3 overall concepts. The first concept that we're going to look at is a treehouse concept. And I say treehouse concept, this will ultimately be as literal as the community would like it to be. It's really going to come down to when we work with our playground representative, they can help us in selecting specific materials. But what I will do today is I will walk you through basically the general program and spatial and circulation layout. Again, this meeting is not the meeting where we will be focused necessarily on the absolute detail. The second concept that we were looking at is a waterfall concept. And the third concept that we are looking at is a clubhouse concept. So I will run through the 3 concepts, and then we will come back to this slide at the very end to do a synopsis of the key attributes. So the first concept, the tree house. So again, to recap, as you can see in this image, that existing tree canopy that you saw in the tree analysis plan, we're really trying to maintain the structure where possible by working the accessibility and the open space under that canopy. One thing that we have prioritized, as I mentioned, is the accessibility. So what we've done here is wherever we have an egress point into the park, we are going to do our very best to make it accessible for all. So you'll see along Brookside Avenue, we've removed the stair in this location. And one of the significant changes in this first concept, which is different in the next concept, but there is another entry in this location that exists today. Just given the topographic change, you will see in the next concept, if we want to have universal accessibility from this corner, it will require handrails and ramping, which we will get to in the next concept. It's just if anyone is entirely upset that that egress is missing, rest assured, it is not missing in the next option. The same, so all of the egress points we have coming into the park, we have worked through very general rough grading at this point to make sure, as you can see by the orange dots, that we will have accessibility throughout the park to access the primary play zones. So with regard to the primary play zones, again, keeping in mind these plateaus and natural slopes that you have in your park, we're proposing keeping this area open with perhaps multi-use courts. And those will be conversations we have with you. Is it a half basketball court, 4 square, hopscotch? And then in this area, we're proposing just berming up the grade a little bit and having a simple seat wall so that we can have some gathering, some passive seating and viewing of the courts while people are playing. In this area, we're proposing, it's just an interesting piece. It's called a ledge hanger, and it's illustrated up here in the upper right corner. Again, trying to think of how to activate program for all users in the park. This is a great piece for teenagers to use, really people of not necessarily our littlest ones, although I know a couple who would be climbing up there, but to get the teens involved. And then, as I mentioned before, this is the general location of the existing Ladybug Rock, which in all 3 concepts we are maintaining. And in this area, we're proposing, we heard during Community 1 that people are interested in having a passive zone. So this could really be a zone where we have picnic tables under the existing tree canopy. We have a little off the beaten path bench seating area. We'd have a little zone here with just some natural boulders. The kids can like walk on the boulders in the grasses. We could have some butterfly houses, all in relation to the Ladybug Rock. Continuing through the park, as we all know, you have this existing slope in the middle of the park, and we looked at that as a great opportunity to introduce creative play. How can we use the slope instead of feeling like it's an impediment and in the way, and how do we get people up and down? Why not utilize it for creative play? And one example of that you can see in image C here. There's some really great play opportunities out there right now for using natural slope, having climbing ropes, as you can see in the back here, mini rock walls that are at a slope, so they're a little safer than a straight edge climbing wall. So that is our proposal in this area. And then as we come up to the upper plateau where we have the existing play area, as we access the site from the south, we are proposing, and again, this will all be dependent upon final grading. These are early concepts, but we were thinking that it would be fun to have, as you walk into the park, this almost focal, like higher treehouse element, where as you come into the park from the south, there could be a second level that goes into a second level of the treehouse. And then if you go down a grand wide stair, or for accessibility, come down a sloped walk, which would not require handrails into this area, you could come down and then there'd be a lower first floor area. So the kiddos could really engage on different levels and have different, just different views throughout this zone. And then we were envisioning with the treehouse concept, having some type of rope element for climbing, for muscle strength, some climbing element coming off of the treehouse with sort of that concept of a spider web. And then this play climbing area could then transition into a zone where we could have swings. We hear swings are important. We could have a slide element coming off of this treehouse as illustrated in the image E, and then down to a spray pad element in this location. In the spray pad element, we could have some type of aesthetic with these little spiders that spit their little spider spray. And then off the beaten path, we are thinking this might be a nice area to have some fitness apparatus for users of all ages. So that is the treehouse concept. I will move on to the next concept. This is more of a waterfall concept. So you will see similar in all three options. We're really maintaining the edges. We intentionally did not decide to open up Cornwall Street or Brookside Avenue for fear of destroying the tree structure. Again, maintaining accessibility at all egress points into the park. And as I had mentioned, we have maintained the entry along Brookside Ave in this southwestern location. And what you can see here is wherever we have a dark red dot illustrates where we would need to have an accessible ramp, which means we would need to have handrails. We would need to have 30-foot runs at 8% and then landings in order to get everybody into the park safely and securely. And you can see here, this would require a handicap ramp along this edge, and then we could have a turn to get you to the upper level, and then another handicap ramp up to get to the southern entrance. This concept, the program is a little different in that you come into the park, and in this lower plateau area, this is where we are envisioning more of the active play, where we could have the swings, a spinner of some sort, climber, some tactile elements. And then as you, what we're in this concept, we're proposing using this existing slope as an opportunity to work a sloped walk in and around these seat walls, which would allow for an amphitheater of sorts that could then look down to a simple performance area as illustrated in the image E. Nothing overly done, but we did hear that we would want to have some electrical outlets. Great idea for plugging, for just immediate access to electricity. But if we had this meandering slope walk up through the seating, gives us access to this upper play area where we could have a spray pad. The spray pad would be, it would be localized to this area, but through the color of the surfacing, and then creatively placed boulders down this slope, we could create this concept of this dry riverbed to just give this, bring nature into your park. Then off to the west, this is, in this option, we're proposing having the open courts in this location again, whether it's a half court, here we're proposing 4 square, and then in this letter B, this zone, this might be a nice opportunity, again, to utilize some slope. We could put a net, an anchored net, or some anchor ropes, just to give the kids an alternate feeling for play. And then for passive seating and gathering, we're proposing a picnic area in this zone, picnic tables, again, in this area, maintaining the Ladybug Rock with seating and benches, bike racks throughout. The final concept, we were thinking clubhouse, again, utilizing those plateaus that we've discussed. This option, we go back to eliminating the egress point along Brookside Avenue and really trying to maximize the opportunity to eliminate handrails wherever possible. These will all be, grading will inform the final design for sure, but we're hopeful that this will be achievable. Having 4.5% sloped walk up into this open multi-use court zone. And then in this section A, as illustrated in the image here, just having some simple seat walls built into an earthen mound, again, for seating, viewing, gathering, watching kids playing games, chatting off the beaten path. We'd have 4 square, drop shot. Those are details that we can get into for the community meeting number 3, as hopefully toward the end of this meeting, we can hear from you what your preferences are regarding the conversation this evening, and then we can start to talk about the finer details. Continuing on with the concept, this is a little different because what we're proposing is, with this clubhouse idea, having more of a central clubhouse gathering, is illustrated in this image C, where perhaps we can use the natural change of grade to, again, work some type of an upper level and a lower level. Maybe it's a half level, or it's something you can climb under. Again, that will be determined by grading. And then this lavender colored zone, working more of an organic slope play zone next to the clubhouse in this location. And then again, keeping the Ladybug Rock, having a seating area in this location, butterfly houses, and then continuing on to this upper play area. This could be the zone, again, where we have the swings, the spinners, the climbers, and then over where we have letter D, this is where we could have, this has more of a flower, plant, leaf aesthetic for a spray pad of sorts. And then over here, where we have the existing trees and this existing asphalt walkway, this may be an opportunity to incorporate some type of a zip line element, more of a linear play element. But again, I will say that with the stipulation that all of this will be determined when we start working with the playground manufacturer, because we need to make sure that we can propose elements that are safe, maintainable, sustainable, and work for the project. And then in this concept, you can see, again, the orange dots represent those sloped walks, and then the red dots represent generally where we would need to have a ramp with handrails in order to achieve accessibility. We're nearing the end. Thank you for holding on. So play activity type, these are, again, just images. And my understanding is that B will be sharing this presentation. So again, anybody go through and make comment, I love that. That's awful. Don't, any feedback that we hear will be helpful. But as I mentioned during community meeting 1, when designing playgrounds, there's so much to consider. Safety, accessibility, number 1, but program, making sure we have program to engage all users of the park, and really targeting, really getting kids engaged. We have these options for climbing, again, motion, strength, fitness, swinging, so that they get that feeling of motion and movement in space. Slope, as I had mentioned, really, really interesting things happening with slope play. I have to say I'm really excited to incorporate elements like this if you are excited as well. And then inclusivity, it just drives, just like accessibility, safety, it just drives what we do. So wherever we end up, whatever concept we move forward with, we will be working inclusive elements so that all of our friends can enjoy the playground equally, be it through communication boards, just accessible pieces so that nobody feels left out. Spray, we're thinking, we know nearby there is a spray park. So we're thinking this is a nice opportunity to have more of a spray pad. We know that with climate change, the world is getting warmer, cities are getting hotter. We believe it would be nice to have a place where the kids can cool off. So again, just some imagery to help stir the creative juices. So the overview discussion, as I had mentioned, just to quickly review, concept A, the tree house, the key attributes. We have 4 entries into the park. The lower level is really for open court play. The upper level is for play equipment in this zone and a spray pad in this area. The slope, we're really maximizing active play with climbing ropes, port in place rubber surfacing so that it's completely maintainable and safe. And then the overall theme is ideally a 2-story tree house with an extended climber, that look of a spider web, and then woodland creature spray elements throughout. The waterfall, the key attributes, we've maintained we have 5 entry points into the park. The lower level is for the active play equipment and performance. The upper level, we have the spray pad and the open court play on the upper level. And then we're using the slope for access, amphitheater seating with boulders, and a little bit of that slope play in this yellow zone. And the overall theme is the central spine of a waterfall with the upper spray pad. It's more of a physical reference, but it's cascading down the slope with the dry riverbed. And then finally, concept C, the clubhouse. We have 4 entries into the park, open court play on the lower level, play equipment and a spray pad up above, a central clubhouse and climbing slope with the overall theme, the central clubhouse and related site structures. So that said, next steps, we look forward to having a discussion with you in just a couple of minutes. As Bea mentioned, in July, we are hoping to take the comments, feedbacks from today, come back to you with a refined design, community meeting 3. Fall 2022, permitting, design development, and the construction documents. Permitting is just absolutely important for any project in the city of Boston. So we are gearing up for that. Summer 2022, hoping to finalize the design. Spring 2023, ideally beginning construction with an anticipated park opening of fall 2023.
Okay, I think, sorry, don't jump right in here, but if we could go back a couple slides, and then I think we can have the conversation, and then at the end we'll sort of recap with all of the links and stuff like that. Yeah, thank you guys so much for that wonderful, thorough presentation. I think there are a lot of fantastic comments going on in the chat, so everyone's been super active. That's great. I think there are a number of questions having to do with dogs and dog walks and dog parks, and it definitely was a use that was reported for the park, and it was sort of in the middle, right? Like if we sort of go back, it was like, okay, we like it for the playground, we like walking through there. Dog walkers, people walking their dogs, I think was sort of the number 4 use. And people certainly emailed me with their interest and support of a dog park. Our concern, Parks Department perspective here, is that the size for a dog park should be about 10,000 feet. And we've been working on this knowledge over the years, getting it wrong in some places, getting it right in other places. And so if you're looking at the required size of about 10,000 feet, that's about 20% of the playground area, the park area. We have a park here that's 1.3 acres. Another requirement for a dog run is that it is at least 100 feet from a residential adjacent edge. And the reason for this is because once you have an enclosed in area, it starts to smell. Even if you are absolutely diligent about picking up dog poop, dog pee smells. And so that is one of the other requirements. So essentially what we're looking at is like a dog run that takes up about 20% of the space in more or less the middle of the site. And for us, that doesn't seem, and especially given that it was not like the top priority or like one of the top 2 priorities, it seems like that does not earn its place in the park. So I understand that people are going to be frustrated about that. I absolutely understand that there is a limited amount of space that dogs have that are, you know, enclosed in this area, in this type. And so I apologize for that. I wish that we could do better in that regard, but because we have limited space, limited park space in the city, we do prioritize the use of kids and people over the dogs. So we are, we're not looking at adding a dog park in this area. That was one of the big conversation topics. I think there's other questions in here about spray area. And this is good. And I think, you know, we could certainly open this up to conversation. It doesn't have to be me talking here. There is a spray pad that is very big, that is like a block away. And we're totally aware of that. We thought perhaps it would make sense to include one here if it's something that everyone's interested in. Seems like there's some interest, there's some not interested. What about a small spray area? Does that make sense, right? Like it is going to be 95 degrees over the weekend. Again, if everyone's opposed to this, we're not in the business of shoving it down your throats. So I thought we could open it up to conversation. How's that? And I think Steve, if you want to unmute people as they raise their hands.
Sure, Tracy, go ahead.
Hi, so I am the opposer to the spray park, of course, only because there's one right around the corner from where we live or on Green Street that is rather large and is always crowded. It's a beautiful space, but I believe that it's operated by DCR, if I'm not mistaken, and they actually employ someone to keep that space clean because there are a number of people that come on the weekend and on the weekdays, and especially when it's hot. And so it's great that they employ someone, but I don't assume that that will happen on Flaherty and in Flaherty Park. So, you know, they have also put bathrooms there. It had quite an odor for a number of years, and they added bathrooms, but it does require a commitment for those reasons. So that is my opposition to it. Okay,
Definitely noted. I think we probably wouldn't have a ton of people coming here just because it would be smaller, but that is a absolutely great, some great points.
All right, I'm calling on the Shulman family. Go ahead.
So I like concept A a lot, but I kind of feel like we don't need another like basketball court because there's like a few others around the neighborhood, and we could instead take from one of the other ones and take the amphitheater for that space.
Yeah, so I same. I really like option A. I do like the idea of a zip line. I think if we could like incorporate option A with a zip line, and like that would be good.
right. Good ideas, kids.
That's-
I'm gonna come in as well. I'm the mom. Yeah, overall, these concepts look great. It sounds like you really took in a lot of community feedback to them. Yeah, in this household, I think the treehouse one seems like the most appealing, but the clubhouse also has some appeal. The waterfall less so. I really like that Ladybug Rock is being kept and that you're thinking of putting butterfly houses by them and all the nice passive seating. That's lovely. That's really nice. And making sure there's enough swings, because that's a big one at this playground. And just in general, I agree with the kids. There's a lot of basketball courts around, but having a court space to do like foursquare or other kind of things is nice. You just don't really need a basketball hoop. And in terms of the water feature, so yeah, there's a lot of water space around. We would not object to having a small water feature, but we definitely would not be interested in something large. I do like that these water features are very different than what we have in the neighborhood, kind of like the overhead spider, or I see a bunch of different ideas that are very different than the kind of water features we have in the neighborhood. So if we do one, a small one that's different is kind of cool. And slope play is very cool. We'd be very interested in slope play. So that's a neat design idea for the space as it is. And overall, these look great. Thank you.
And bike racks are useful.
Oh yeah, bike racks are useful.
Awesome. That's super helpful, Schulman family. I think something that you're already doing just instinctively is something that I want to just flag for everyone, that like the goal here is not necessarily to pick one design that we love and we're going with, unless everyone feels absolutely like, oh my God, one concept is far better than, that's fine if that happens. But ideally, we can pick and choose elements and things from each design that we like, and then we're going to create a design that responds to those different preferences. So awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, Jacob and Caleb, go ahead.
All right, I'll let Caleb start.
So I like concept A because I like the idea of the treehouse. It seems like it would be like the thing that we have now, just like 3 times stacked up on each other, and then a little bit like a few more things added. Also, I like the idea of the basketball court, and I think like the hoop could be like 8 feet instead of like 10 feet, because like for like a kid to be able to shoot more easily. And also I like the idea for the clubhouse, not the clubhouse zip line, because I like the idea of it, but I think I'm wondering if it is like a zip line that is long and not like very short, and if it's high up or lower, or if it's fast or slow. But I think it should be sort of long and a little bit fast, not really that fast, but not so fast that it would make someone get hurt at the end. But yeah.
Can I jump in a couple things?
So
that was awesome. So there's a zip line in Jackson Square, which is short and doesn't get a ton of use at the playground behind the train station. So that's a point of comparison, which is fairly close by. By contrast, the zip line by the Esplanade in that park there gets a ton of use and is long and exciting and fast. So just like thinking about what's being put there. My main comment, and I think this is really cool, like these presentations, is just the overall aesthetic of what's being put in. So I'm seeing a lot of features. I know we're not supposed to get caught up in the individual features, but I'm seeing a lot of plastic, metal, and rubber being introduced to a mostly natural space. And I don't think it has to be that way. You know, they're like nature style playgrounds like the one in Cambridge, on Cambridge Common, which is just fantastic. And I think there was a lot of people who advocated for like a natural materials, like wooden structure, you know, for this space. And I'd really like to see something like that looked into and included alongside additional landscaping and gardens and like feeling like you're in a natural space, not like you're in a city playground. Thanks.
So those are great comments, and you're right. You know, the things that we're showing here are a little bit more off the shelf and more, you know, produced materials. And I think the challenge as far as budget and maintenance goes are budget and maintenance, which is that custom items are really difficult to maintain. And so we need to understand priorities. If there is, you know, we can't outfit the entire playground with custom pieces, unfortunately. You know, like here's like the whole wood, you know, I'm familiar with the Cambridge Common playground. My daughter loves it. I don't know how Cambridge handles their maintenance. They must, I don't know, they're cool that way. But I just know that our guys have a tough time as far as like handling custom items. So we can do something, right? But we can't do everything that way. So I think if you guys can give us feedback as to like, you know, if we have like the wooden frame for like a tire swing or like a climbing structure that's wood materials, or if you're like, we only want one thing and it must be wood and we don't want anything else because that's going to like mess up the aesthetic. Like, I don't know if you're going to get like a total big group of people feeling that way, but like if we could hear that too, you know, it's like, we just sort of need to understand the priorities there because, yeah, it has to do with budget and maintenance and, you know, how much we can afford to spend like custom designing a piece. And then is it going to last like 10 years before pieces start breaking off and people start calling 311 because kids are getting splinters and our guys are like, I don't know what to do. I just have to like come and take it away. And that sucks, you know? So that's our perspective, our boring financial perspective. So anyway, thank you. So I guess what I'm saying is like, add in the chat, email me later, like share now, you know, just like if those priorities are really strong for you, then cool. We want to hear it.
Franklin Peralta, go ahead.
Hi, this is actually Jana, but Franklin's over there. I wanted to second that I would really appreciate natural materials as much as we can afford and avoiding plastic. And also, I don't have the numbers, but the days above 90 in Boston are forecast to increasingly increase. They're going to be many. And it is not fun to go, hang on, Taya! It is not fun to go to a park that has nowhere to cool off. We live up by the Walnut Street Park, which has a tiny little spray element. It's not a big draw, right? It's not like the Green Street where people drive there to hang out. So it doesn't cause a lot of traffic or noise, but it is really, really welcome when it's hot, and it's gonna be hot so much more than we're used to. So I just want us to make this climate resilient, considering how it's no fun to play when it's 97 degrees if you can't spray. And besides that, all these look super awesome. And maintaining as much tree cover, and if you take trees out, putting in ones that will replace it, that are going to survive climate change also.
That's a great point. Someone else put that in the chat earlier and I'd had written it in my notes here, like comment on the tree removal. We would be planting new trees, certainly to replace the ones that we would remove and beyond. You know, I think numbers wise, it's kind of like where we can fit them, we would love to add them. And yes, we have done a survey of the sort of city of Boston trees that we have and those that are slated to be challenged during climate change. And this makes me so sad because I love white pines, but white pines are a species that are like really going to be hit super hard with climate change. So we wouldn't put in any new white pines. But, you know, things like that, like we're definitely aware of that. And we would definitely look to increase the tree cover because yes, shade is critical. One thing that I was thinking of while you're talking is like, there are these things called misting posts, which they usually have near like workout areas that cool you off without being like necessarily like a play feature. If that's something that like would be interesting here and beneficial, that's something we could consider too. I don't know, just throwing that out there.
Amanda Feely, go ahead.
Where am I? Am I here?
You're good. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. I would like to say that I was actually in the park during the presentation.
We lost your voice, Amanda. You're
Amanda, I
muted.
think you might have muted yourself. There you go.
No, I did. So I was saying that I was in the park during the presentation, so I got to look around and see, kind of get an idea of where everything would be, and that was really cool. So what I wanted to say is that I really liked the treehouse concept. I really liked the level idea. I think that walking in at that upper level and it being integrated is really cool. I think that the concept B, the waterfall, because I'm one of the dog people here. I think that the B doesn't really leave a lot of space for the dogs to wander. I think it's definitely can be a shared space between the dog people and the play areas, but I don't know, I guess, yeah, I'm trying to look at it. I think that flow kind of doesn't really go along well with what the space is used for the dogs. Let me see. I like that a lot of the louder things are kind of on streets. Sorry, my dog's being crazy. Street sides, because I also live next door. So I'm a dog person and I live next door. And I think that that was something that you took into consideration, was that where the houses are maybe shouldn't be where the really loud stuff is. So I like that in concept A. But I was wondering what the music element was in that. I don't know if I missed that.
That is a good question. And I think you asked that in the chat too. And I was like, good call. We could talk about this because I don't think we had any specific ideas or images that we showed for it. But this is one of those play items that can have like a range of things where you can have like metal drums that might be a little loud, or you can have like, you know, those xylophone kind of things. You can have things that are sort of incorporating sound, you know, like a sound, like it's like it looks basically like a giant contact lens, and there are two of them, and one person over here speaks into one and it bounces the sound over there. There's a whole range of things. And it's sort of a question of like, is noise an issue? If so, we could do quieter things. Maybe we locate these things in an area of the park where noise is less of an issue. So if people have thoughts or feedback about what kind of musical elements should be included, that would be helpful to hear. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Amanda, if you were still thinking of stuff.
Okay, I can unmute. One thing I love about the park, and which is one of the reasons that I moved next door, is that it's kind of more of a quiet area. It's a little bit more relaxing than the areas that are right next to the train that have a lot going on. I care about the people who might have sensory issues, and I think that the chaotic sound is kind of something that would take away from the space. I think that a lot of people come there just to sit on the park benches when they kind of need time alone. I see a lot of people eating their burritos just by themselves. And I think that I don't know, Biscuit, can you stop? I think that I think that it should, I don't know what I think, because I'm distracted by my dog playing with a really loud toy.
That was funny. Sorry. Your dog is very cute, but trying to talk through that, I wouldn't be able to do that either. I was also responding in the chat to Omar having to do with maintenance on this park. And I'm sorry if it's the feeling that the maintenance is low. But as I'm sure you're probably used to me hearing, we have a lot of parks for very few guys, and they are, they try and do what they can. So that is another reason why we need to install things that are easily maintainable. There was a question having to do with like plantings, what kind of plantings we're using, and that also correlates with our maintenance. And we are planning to install, some new trees, some lawn, and if there is some real interest on the part of the community to maintain certain planted areas, we could add some variety as far as like potentially shrubs and grasses, that kind of thing. But as far as like what our guys will be able to maintain going forward in a way that like looks nice and is safe and things don't get too overgrown, our strong suit is grass and trees. So that is something that we would also like to hear from you guys. If there's, and it really has to be like an organized group that is like, we are horticulturalists, and we'd love to have an area that, showcases some nice fall color or something like that. That kind of thing. So hearing some in the chat also, people not so into the idea of musical instruments. So noted. Thank you. If there's other people who want to.
Yeah, Omar, go ahead.
Thank you. I have Max here who wants to add a couple of notes. They use the playground quite often. Go ahead, Max.
Hello. I would like there to be a rock climbing wall, a mat swing, and I'd like there to be a lot of monkey bars, because I was very good. The ones before were really nice, but they were a little too short. But so I thought
too tall.
No, but in lengthways,
Oh,
they
the
were
distance.
the distance was too short for me, so I thought maybe we could make them a little bit bigger.
All right. Well, thank you very much for these comments.
Oh, and I would also like there to be a slide, because the slide was awesome.
Yes, I agree. There's a shortage of slides there, but personally, I like concept A. I think it's the best featured one. I want to second everything that the Schulman family and Jacob and Caleb said, so I don't want to repeat anything here. But I did have a couple of questions. I did put one in the chat with regards to the south exit. Are you going to be connecting the park to Ackley Place, or will it be connected as it is today to the Brookside Health Clinic parking lot on its way out, which is kind of a strange way that it's connected. I guess it's just the natural way that it got connected. And I also am wholly opposed to sound type features in the park. I want to express that as well. And yeah, the question about maintenance, I guess, is important. Someone asked about in the chat about ice and snow removal. So the city does remove the snow from the sidewalks around the park sometimes, but never inside the park. And so since one of the main uses of this park is for people to cross through, as you saw in the original Venn diagram, the pie charts in the beginning of the presentation, I think that should be something that needs emphasis other than the actual technical maintenance of the features, which I agree, if they're self-maintaining as long as possible, that's great. But if people can't walk through the park, that's difficult. And yeah, I also, I think there's kind of a use question about this park with off-leash dogs and so on. That has to be brought up in terms of how the park is used and so on. Yeah, this is great. I hope there's some real progress and answers to this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Omar. We don't have any plans to relocate the entrance to the park by the health center. I agree, it's certainly not an ideal coming and going experience up there. But as far as the park's property line, we can't really sort of extend things or relocate that. But that's an interesting idea. We'll look at the plans and we'll sort of see like if there's any flexibility. But also let's think about off-leash stuff in the park. Dogs are not legally supposed to be off-leash. So if you see something, nicely say something. That's another thing with dog parks, I guess. Also, if you enclose the space, I did a big tour of dog parks today in the city just to be prepared for this meeting. And the funny thing that I noted was that like the dog runs are really not that used. Like I went to a couple different parks today and like no dogs were in the dog run. They were all in the rest of the park and they were all on leashes, all being very well behaved. I love dogs, so I support dogs. But that's another challenge about providing a dog run is that like the dog run gets used up very quickly. The grass dies. You end up with sort of a dust bowl. And then the dog owners are like, well, I kind of like that space over there. Cause like, why wouldn't you? Like the dogs like it too. It's grassy, it's soft. So my suggestion for this park would be that like, if dog walkers still want to come to this park, that's cool. Put your dogs on a leash, right? Be a good citizen. But if we have a sort of sequestered area, it doesn't function well for long. So there are other elements in the chat. Yeah, dogs don't like the gravel. I know, I wouldn't like the gravel either. Pause. Any other comments?
Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, so awesome. I'm Eric, everyone. Let's see if I can do this effectively. There we go. So my limited worldview perspective is a married person without children, dog, dad, is sort of the perspective I'm coming in with this young professional. I think the overarching theme that I've noticed is, how can we increase activation of this relatively small parcel of land, comparatively. And there's been a lot of great intentionality in highlighting that activation. Namely, what jumps out to me is utilizing the slope as just, rather than wasted space, activating that for activity. I'd like to commend, being explicit with that, and then also challenge moving forward. How can these designs explicitly increase activation, not only from different age groups or accessibility levels or accessibility options, but can the different spaces be served two purposes based on who's using it? Can it be a play area for children during the day? And potentially, can that same space be used for adults or families in the evening for possibly a small concert or something with a pavilion? Respecting the square footage limitations that is Boston in general, can we create a space that has multi-use depending on age group or time of day for it? And would love the kind of explicit connecting of those dots as we're presenting these plans, just to help us non-professional planners, see the bigger picture. Same thing with winter use. So this park is here year round. A lot of the overarching theme in this particular presentation has been summer, spring. I would love kind of an explanation or intentionality of design for continued use in the winter, if that's possible. I have no experience in this, so it may be a lofty goal, but if that's possible, I would love those dots to be connected in the presentations. And then the last thing, I'll try to be concise. It's a fascinating kind of discussion from a climate change perspective. We're dealing with kind of acute fires, that is heat islands and such, as we're having this conversation about water features. However, do we really want to incentivize people driving their internal combustion engine vehicles to this place, further, exacerbating potentially the more chronic issue? And I think that's probably an academic discussion, but keeping that big picture in mind while also respecting the very real kind of acute issues that are affecting inequitably, primarily minority populations, and trying to find that balance and kind of being intentional with our plans kind of moving forward. And I definitely think the context of certain aspects is definitely welcome from my perspective, and definitely very much appreciate that additional context as we are discussing through this. So definitely encourage that type of response conversation moving forward. But yeah, I'm excited to see, with this public process, what it all looks like and how it's going to do moving forward. That's it. I'll stop talking before I take too much time.
Thank you so much, Eric. Those are some great points, and I think overlapping uses and trying to incorporate all of the users of the park at different times in different ways. You made a lot of other good points as well. I'm not going to try and recap that, but thank you. Those are some great comments. And I think looking at the chat as well, there are a lot of other people who are sort of sounding off based on that. So great contribution. Thank you. Are there any others who have any strong feelings they'd like to bring up, or just comments or suggestions? Wow, cool. I'm shocked. All right, it's 7:17. So if we want to, we can end this early. We had until 7:30 sort of logged in our schedules, but we can move ahead here in the presentation a bit. This is a little Parks Department plug for the open space and recreation plan. This is a citywide effort. We are trying to figure out what you guys like, what you hate, what you need, what we're not fulfilling, what we are fulfilling. This is, we are doing the open space plan for the next, I think it's 5 years. Every 5 years we do this. So if you could please fill out our survey for that, that would be fantastic. That will help the Parks Department as a whole try and do a better job, right? This recording will be provided. I'm just seeing Tracy's question in the chat. After this meeting, it takes a couple days, but this recording will be uploaded to our project page, and I am going to put the project page. I'm going to write it correctly this time because the first time I didn't. That was embarrassing. boston.gov/Flaherty. There we go. Let me spell that right. Flaherty Playground. Okay. So in a couple days, I will also send out an email blast when these things have been uploaded. But we also have a survey that we would love for you to fill out for this part. If we could go to the next page. There we go. Okay, so our survey is, we've got the address there. If you want to take a photo of it, we've got the QR code as well. And this is also going to be accessible via our project page. So if you go in, you can do the survey and the meeting, you know, like provide your comments in both venues, that's great. If you could forward the survey around to people who didn't make it to the meeting, that would be huge. This has been some really, really, really helpful suggestions. And I think we have a good sense of priorities. I think what we're going to do, the survey closes, when does the survey close? A couple weeks, I think, is usually, I don't know if we actually discussed that. Did we, designers?
We typically do a 2-week cycle. Fee.
Okay.
Yeah, but we can extend it if you think it's important to do so.
Let's see when we are able to put it up on the project page, because sometimes it takes like a couple days for that link to be live from the project page. So we'll do 2 weeks from that date in order to give people enough time. So yeah, we're gonna take in all the feedback from all the different areas, and then we sort of go dark for a little while, and Pencil's working hard, not hardly, sorry. And then we're gonna have our 3rd community meeting, hopefully in July, and I will email everybody about that. And I just wanna thank you guys again. This has been a tremendously helpful, very supportive group. I just, I'm really grateful for that. So thank you everyone, and have a wonderful night.